Hey, let's talk about something a little different today. Something that goes deeper than the usual celebrity drama. Something about two people, two stories, that unfolded right in front of us, and somehow still left us wondering what really happened. You probably remember the chaos that surrounded Amber Heard and Johnny Depp just a couple of years ago. It was everywhere. The headlines. The videos. The memes. The trial that captivated the internet for weeks. It wasn't just news, it was a spectacle. And whether you were Team Johnny, Team Amber, or just someone who wanted to avoid it all, you couldn't escape it. It was that loud. But then, something weird happened. After all the noise, the shouting, the courtroom tension, and social media battles, they both disappeared. No follow-ups. No explosive tell-all interviews. No big movie premieres. Just silence. At first, that silence felt strange. Like waiting for the next episode of a show that just stopped airing. Everyone was holding their breath, expecting a twist, a spin, a big Hollywood redemption arc. But nothing came. Instead, they each went their separate ways. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and creatively. And now, they're both back. Sort of. But their comebacks couldn't be more different. One chose the quiet path. A life far from the flashing cameras, far from the noise. The other stepped back into the limelight with confidence, passion, and what looked like a plan to take back the narrative. This is the story of two comebacks. Two completely opposite returns from one of the most publicized falls from grace. And somehow, even though they came from the same storm, the roads they've taken couldn't be more different. Let's start with Amber. After the 2022 trial ended, she didn't do what a lot of celebrities might do. No apology tour. No edgy podcast. No emotional Instagram post. She just left. She quietly moved to Spain, with her daughter. No cameras followed her. No red carpet appearances. It was like she decided she'd had enough of trying to be understood by the public, and instead, chose to just live. And maybe that's the most surprising thing of all. Because in a world where celebrities often fight for visibility, where staying relevant is everything, Amber walked away. On purpose. She chose peace over power. Silence over attention. You've probably seen some of the rare photos or clips of her walking around Madrid or Mallorca. No bodyguards. No entourage. Just a woman, her child, and a new life. And when a reporter recently caught up with her and asked if she liked living in Spain, her answer was simple and calm: I love living here. I hope I can just stay. That's not a soundbite. That's a sigh of relief. Think about it, this is someone who had her life, career, and choices torn apart in the public eye. People took sides. The internet got ugly. No matter what side you were on, it was impossible to ignore that it all got deeply personal. So Amber doing what she did. Moving overseas, focusing on her daughter, speaking Spanish fluently, and choosing privacy over publicity, that's not weakness. That's strength. It's not running away. It's reclaiming your peace. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn. She didn't disappear forever. Behind the scenes, she's been slowly rebuilding. She took on a role in a small, independent film called In the Fire. It's not flashy. It's not Oscar bait. But it's hers. A project she could be part of without the pressure, without the media circus. It's a reminder that sometimes, getting back on your feet isn't about making a grand entrance. It's about making meaningful steps, quietly, but intentionally. And yeah, she's done a few interviews lately. Nothing dramatic. No shade thrown. Just honest conversations. Calm. Measured. Thoughtful. She's not trying to win people back. She's just trying to move forward. Now let's talk about Johnny. Because his return. It's been the complete opposite. After the trial, while Amber was finding peace overseas, Johnny stepped right back into the light. But he didn't do it recklessly. It wasn't about proving something. It felt more like he was just ready. He directed a movie, his first in over 25 years. That alone is huge. The film's called Modi, and it tells the story of artist Amedeo Modigliani. It's not just a project for him, it's personal. It's creative. It's bold. And then came Cannes. The red carpet. The cheers. The cameras. The standing ovation. It wasn't just a return. It was a declaration. Johnny was back. But not as the swashbuckling pirate, or the quirky Tim Burton muse. He returned as a filmmaker. A musician. A storyteller. He picked up his guitar again, touring with his band, the Hollywood Vampires. He performed on stage, surrounded by fans who never stopped believing in him. And it felt like he was reconnecting with the things that mattered most to him. The art, the music, the freedom to create. And let's not forget Dior. Their campaign with Johnny wasn't just a comeback, it was a record-breaking one. Reportedly the biggest fragrance endorsement deal in history. That's not just business. That's Hollywood sending a message, we're ready to work with you again. But maybe the most surprising thing in all of this? He didn't spend his return talking about Amber. He didn't dwell on the past. He didn't stir the pot. He just kept moving. Quiet confidence. That's the vibe he's giving off these days. Someone who's been through the fire and come out the other side, not untouched, but wiser. And what's fascinating here is not just the contrast between Johnny and Amber, but the timing. They both went silent at the same time. And then, almost in sync, they both began to reappear. Slowly, carefully, on their own terms. But their approaches? Completely different. Amber stepped into a quiet, grounded life. She focused on her daughter, her healing, and a soft creative return. Johnny chose to rise. He stepped onto stages, into studios, onto red carpets. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was leading with his art. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Because there's no one right way to come back from a fall. There's no perfect roadmap for rebuilding your life when the whole world's been watching you crumble. Some people need stillness. Others need movement. Some people need to leave everything behind to find themselves. Others need to dive back into their passions to feel alive again. And when we look at Amber and Johnny, we're seeing both those paths in real time. Amber reminds us that it's okay to walk away. That healing doesn't always have to be loud. That you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Johnny reminds us that it's okay to reclaim space. That you're allowed to create again. That being seen doesn't mean being defined by your past. And maybe the reason these stories still interest us, months after the trial ended, is because we see ourselves in them. Not the fame. Not the headlines. But the humanity. We've all had moments where we've been misunderstood. Where we've had to pick up the pieces. Where we've questioned who we are, or who we want to be. And so when we watch Amber walking quietly through the streets of Spain, smiling with her daughter, we think, yeah, maybe I could use a break too. It's not just about her being a celebrity. It's something deeper. Something human. There's something about the way she's chosen to slow down, to be present, that feels almost refreshing. In a world where everyone's constantly connected, where every moment is shared, filtered, liked, and judged, watching someone simply step back feels radical. Almost brave. She's not making statements on Instagram. She's not calling the press to photograph her morning coffee run. She's just living. Really living. Walking slowly, not rushing anywhere. Wearing comfortable clothes, holding her daughter's tiny hand. Looking around at the world instead of looking at a screen. And when we see that, when we sit with it for a second, it starts to hit us in a very personal way. Because how often do we do that? How often do we wake up and just be with our kids or loved ones? No distractions, no buzzing phones, no mental to-do lists hijacking our focus. Not often. We're so used to rushing. To pushing. To doing more, achieving more, proving ourselves. Work deadlines. Social obligations. Notifications. News updates. It's like our brains never get to shut off. There's always another thing demanding our energy, our attention, our time. But watching Amber in those quiet moments, it's like someone pressed pause. And not just on her life, but on ours too. Even if it's just for a few seconds. We watch her and suddenly remember that life doesn't always have to be so loud. That healing, and even happiness, can be found in simplicity. In walking down a shaded street. In hearing the click of your child's shoes on the pavement. In breathing in the smell of baked bread from a corner cafe, not because you're rushing to post it, but because you're actually hungry, actually there, actually in the moment. It sounds small, right? Almost boring. But maybe that's the magic of it. Because after years of chaos and judgment and defending herself in public, Amber didn't try to fight fire with fire. She didn't try to outshine anyone or outtalk anyone. She just walked away. Not out of weakness. But out of strength. Out of a choice to create a different life. And that decision, no matter what you think of her, resonates. Because there's something deeply universal about being burned out. About being tired of the noise. About wanting to reset. How many of us have thought, even for a fleeting second, I wish I could just get away from it all. Not forever. Not to escape reality. But just for a little while. Just long enough to breathe, to think, to feel like ourselves again. Amber did that. She packed her things. Moved to a country where she wasn't constantly recognized. Where the language was different. The pace was slower. The air, maybe, just a little easier to breathe. And there, in the middle of that quiet life, she found something that looks a lot like peace. Of course, we don't know all the details. We don't see everything. But what we do see, those glimpses of her walking along the coast, laughing with her daughter, picking out fruit at the market, it speaks louder than any press release ever could. It says, I'm still here. I'm still me. I'm healing, and that's okay. And when you see that, when you really feel it, it's hard not to reflect inward. Because maybe you've been through something too. Maybe you've been misjudged. Or maybe you've just been carrying more than you realize, expectations, responsibilities, regrets, pressure. And suddenly, this image of someone quietly moving through their day in a distant place doesn't feel like a tabloid moment. It feels like an invitation. An invitation to slow down. To listen to your own needs. To check in with your mental health. Your peace. Your dreams. Not in a dramatic, movie-style escape way. But in a grounded, realistic, honest way. It makes you wonder, when's the last time you just took a walk, not for exercise, not for steps on your fitness tracker, but just to be present? When's the last time you sat outside, not scrolling, not talking, just sitting? When's the last time you let yourself do nothing, and didn't feel guilty about it? Watching Amber do those things reminds us that we're allowed. We're allowed to rest. We're allowed to choose quiet. We're allowed to say, I need space, and take it. Because self-care doesn't always look like bubble baths and spa days. Sometimes it looks like packing up your life and starting fresh. Sometimes it looks like a small apartment in a new city. A slower pace. A walk through narrow streets with no destination. A quiet morning with your child before the world wakes up. It looks like freedom. And maybe that's why her story, her simple daily life now, hits us harder than all the courtroom drama ever did. Because it speaks to something in us that's been whispering all along, you don't have to keep running. You can stop. You can breathe. So yeah, when we see Amber in those moments, smiling gently, moving calmly, just being, it's not just a photo. It's a feeling. A soft, subtle reminder that maybe we all need a little break. A reset. A walk through our own version of quiet streets. And maybe, just maybe, that's where we begin to find peace too. And when we see Johnny stepping onto a stage, guitar in hand, soaking up the applause, we think, yeah, maybe I'm ready to try again. It's not about taking sides anymore. It's about understanding that people heal differently. That stories evolve. That comebacks aren't always about grand gestures, they're about small decisions made in private. And if there's anything we can take from all of this, it's this. You're allowed to reset. You're allowed to walk away from what hurt you. Or walk straight into what inspires you. You're allowed to come back as someone new. Or someone more you than ever before. That's what Amber and Johnny are showing us. Not with speeches. Not with drama. Just by living their lives, differently. They're not standing on stages telling us how to heal. They're not writing long, emotional statements about their personal growth. And they're not pushing a message through sponsored posts or staged interviews. They're simply doing what many of us forget we're allowed to do, move forward in our own way. And that might be the most powerful part of their story. Because we live in a world that constantly demands explanations. Every move is questioned. Every pause is judged. If you're quiet, people wonder what you're hiding. If you speak out, people ask if you're being performative. It's a cycle that can feel impossible to win. But these two, despite being under one of the most intense media spotlights in recent years, chose to stop playing that game. They didn't ask for forgiveness on a stage. They didn't fight for applause. They just started living again. And they didn't do it the same way. That's important. Amber chose softness. Stillness. She found a rhythm that was slower, more intentional. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about protecting her peace, her child, her future. By relocating, by stepping away from Hollywood, she showed us that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. Sometimes, it sits quietly at a cafe with no makeup on, learning a new language, blending in instead of standing out. She's not shouting, "Look at me." She's gently saying, "I'm okay now." And that message, without any press release or social media post, says more than words ever could. On the other side, Johnny took a path that looks louder on the surface, but it came from the same place, healing. He walked back into the world, not with arrogance, but with clarity. With his art. With his music. With a focus that had little to do with revenge and everything to do with rediscovery. He's not reliving the past. He's not endlessly rehashing what happened. He's creating again. And that in itself is a statement. Neither of them are claiming to be perfect. And they're not pretending nothing ever happened. But they're also not letting the worst chapters of their lives define the rest of the story. What we're seeing is two people choosing. Choosing to show up as they are now, not as who they were during the storm. It's subtle. It's quiet. But it's real. And that might be the most honest kind of comeback there is. No fireworks. No slogans. Just life being lived, one step at a time. Not to impress us. Not to convince us. Just because that's how healing works. Not all at once, but slowly, in the everyday things. That's what makes their stories worth paying attention to, not because they're celebrities, but because they're human. Just like the rest of us. So now, I'm curious. Which comeback hit you more? Was it Amber's quiet strength and choice to live simply in Spain? Or Johnny's bold, artistic return to the world stage? I'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment down below. Let's talk about it. And if you're into these deep dive stories, the ones that go beyond the headlines and get into the real stuff, go check out our next video on Hollywood's most unexpected comebacks. There's a few in there that will totally surprise you. Also, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It helps more than you know. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. We've got more stories, more insights, and more heart-to-heart conversations coming your way. Because here, we're not just chasing gossip. We're chasing truth, and a little bit of hope. Thanks for hanging out today. Stay curious. And stay kind. I'll see you in the next one.